The call came on a Tuesday, my brother David's name flashing across my phone screen like a warning I chose to ignore. "Natasha, we need to talk." His voice was oddly formal, lacking the casual warmth I'd grown accustomed to during our weekly calls. "I've been meaning to tell you something important." A knot formed in my stomach, that instinctive sense that something was terribly wrong. I closed my eyes, pressing the phone closer to my ear as I stood in my tiny apartment kitchen, dinner preparations forgotten. "What's going on, David?" He hesitated, the silence stretching uncomfortably between us. "It's about the house, Dad's house. Our childhood home. The sprawling Victorian on Maple Street that had weathered decades of our family's history, birthdays, holidays, arguments, reconciliations. The house our father had left to us jointly when he passed away 2 years ago, with the understanding that I would live there while I finished my doctoral program." "What about it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I sold it." 2 words. Simple, direct, devastating. The room seemed to tilt beneath me, and I gripped the countertop to steady myself. "You what?" "David, that's not possible. The house is in both our names." Another painful silence. "Not exactly. Dad put it in my name with the understanding that I'd take care of you. And I have, Tash. I've let you live there rent-free for 2 years." My mind raced through blurry memories of paperwork signed after Dad's funeral, documents I'd barely glanced at through tear-filled eyes, trusting my older brother to handle things as he always did. But my things are there. My life is there," I stammered, panic rising in my chest. "You can't just sell it without telling me." "That's why I'm calling now," David replied, his voice taking on an edge of impatience. "The new owners take possession next week. I need you to move your stuff out by Saturday." "Next week?" The words came out as a strangled whisper. "David, that's 4 days from now. Where am I supposed to go?" "Look, I meant to tell you sooner, but..." He paused, and I could almost see him running his hand through his hair, a nervous habit from childhood. "Lauren and I need the money for our new house in Seattle. The market was hot, and we got an offer we couldn't refuse." Lauren, my brother's wife of 3 years. The corporate attorney whose ambition had slowly transformed my kind, thoughtful brother into someone I barely recognized. "How much?" I asked, anger finally breaking through my shock. "What? How much did you sell our family home for?" He cleared his throat. $1.2 million. The air left my lungs in a rush. Our father's house, the house he'd worked his entire life to pay off, the house where he'd raised us after Mom died, sold for $1.2 million. Money that, by rights, should have been split between us. "And my share?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Tash, be reasonable. You've been living there for free. Your share was 2 years of not paying rent in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Portland." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not while he could hear them. "That's not what Dad wanted, and you know it. Dad wanted us taken care of. I'm doing well, and you're almost done with your program. You'll be fine. You always land on your feet." The casual dismissal of my situation, of my rightful inheritance, felt like a physical blow. "I need to go," I said flatly. "Natasha, don't be like this." I hung up. For several minutes, I stood motionless in my kitchen, the half-chopped vegetables forgotten on the cutting board as my world imploded. My brother had sold our family home without my knowledge or consent, and now I had 4 days to pack up my entire life and find somewhere else to go. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "I'll send some boxes over tomorrow. Lauren knows a good storage place if you need it." The audacity of his help ignited something inside me. I threw my phone across the room, watching with grim satisfaction as it clattered against the wall. Then, I sank to the floor and finally let the tears come. The following morning, I called in sick to the university where I both studied and taught as a teaching assistant. I couldn't face my students or colleagues while my life was disintegrating. Instead, I drove to the family home. The house that was no longer Minianed stood in the driveway, staring up at its familiar facade. Every window, every brick, every imperfection was etched into my memory. This was where Dad had taught me to ride a bike on the long driveway, where we'd planted Mom's favorite roses after she passed, where I'd studied late into the night, working toward the PhD that Dad had been so proud to see me pursuing. And now it was sold to strangers. I unlocked the front door, the familiar creak of the hinges bringing a fresh wave of grief. Inside, everything looked as it always had: Dad's antique clock ticking steadily on the mantel, the worn Persian rug in the living room, the family photos lining the hallway. It was a cruelty that the house remained so unchanged when everything else had so drastically shifted. My phone rang, and I saw my best friend Eliza's name on the screen. "I just heard," she said immediately. "David's assistant accidentally copied me on an email about the house sale. Tash, this is insane. Can he even do this?" "Apparently," I said, wandering into the kitchen where I'd spent countless hours with Dad as he taught me to cook. "I checked the property records online this morning. It's only in his name." "But that can't be legal. Your dad wanted you both to inherit." Dad trusted David to do the right thing. I ran my fingers along the smooth countertop. "He always said David would take care of me." "This is not taking care of you," Eliza's voice hardened. "This is theft, plain and simple. You need a lawyer." "With what money, Eliza? I'm a doctoral student living on stipends and teaching wages. David knows I can't fight him on this." There was a pause before Eliza spoke again. "You can stay with me while you figure things out." Her kindness brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Thanks, but your studio is barely big enough for you. I'll figure something out." I attempted a laugh that sounded hollow even to my own ears. Maybe this is the universe telling me it's time for a change. "This isn't the universe, Tash. It's your brother being a greedy jerk." After hanging up, I began the heartbreaking task of sorting through my belongings, deciding what to keep, what to store, what to discard. Every object felt weighted with memories, making the process agonizingly slow. By evening, I'd made little progress and was sitting amid piles of books when I heard the front door open. "Tash?" David's voice echoed through the house. I didn't answer, but he found me anyway, standing awkwardly in the doorway of what had been my bedroom since childhood. "I brought boxes," he said, gesturing to the hallway, "and I hired movers for Saturday." I looked up at him, this stranger who shared my blood, my history. "How generous of you," he sighed, stepping into the room. "I know you're upset." "Upset?" I cut him off, getting to my feet. "David, you stole my inheritance and you're making me homeless. Upset doesn't begin to cover it." "That's dramatic. You're not homeless. Where am I supposed to go in 4 days?" He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "You could get an apartment. The university has housing options." "With what money, David? Do you have any idea how much I make as a TA? How expensive rentals are right now? Dad left this house to both of us so I would have stability while I finished my degree." "Look, I'm sorry about the timing, but Lauren and you needed the money," I finished for him. "For your new life in Seattle. I heard you the first time." He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "It's not just that. Lauren's pregnant, we're starting a family, and we need a bigger place." The news hit me like another betrayal. My brother was having a baby, I was going to be an aunt, and he hadn't even told me until now, using it as a justification for selling my home out from under me. "Congratulations," I said coldly. "I'm sure your child will appreciate knowing their future was built on what you stole from your sister." "That's not fair." "None of this is fair," I shouted, my composure finally shattering. "Dad trusted you, David. He thought you would honor his wishes, that you would protect me like you always promised him you would. What happened to you?" He flinched at my words, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the brother I'd known, the one who had held my hand at Mom's funeral, who had championed my academic pursuits, who had promised Dad on his deathbed that he would always look out for me. But the moment passed, replaced by a hardened resolve. "I'm doing what's best for my family." "I am your family," I whispered. He looked away. "I'll leave the boxes here. The movers will be here at 8 a.m. on Saturday." And then he was gone, his footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors as he walked away. I stood there, surrounded by the remnants of my life, feeling more alone than I ever had before. The next few days passed in a blur of cardboard boxes, packing tape, and grief. Friends came to help Eliza, my colleague Marco, even my elderly neighbor Mrs. Chen, who brought homemade dumplings and quiet sympathy. But their kindness couldn't erase the fundamental betrayal or the looming uncertainty. By Friday night, most of the house was packed up. My belongings sorted into 3 categories. What would go into storage? What would go to Eliza's tiny apartment where I'd be temporarily staying? And what I would sell or donate? The house felt strange now, hollow and echoing. The spaces where furniture had been removed, revealing paler patches on the walls. I wandered from room to room, saying goodbye to the home that had been my sanctuary. In Dad's study, the one room I'd left for last, I sat at his desk, running my hands over the worn wooden surface. This was where he'd helped me with homework, where he'd reviewed my college applications, where he'd proofread my first academic papers. The drawer still stuck in the same place, requiring a gentle tug to the left before it would open. Inside, I found the usual supply spends, paper clips, a stapler, but beneath them was a thick manila envelope I hadn't seen before. My name was written on it in Dad's distinctive handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside was a letter, dated just weeks before his death, and several legal documents. As I read, my heart began to race. "My dearest Natasha," Dad had written. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and something has happened to make you search through my desk. I'm guessing it involves your brother." A choked laugh escaped me. Dad had known. Somehow, he had anticipated this. David has always been ambitious, driven by success in a way that reminds me of myself at his age. But where I learned to balance ambition with compassion, I fear David is still learning that lesson. I've put the house in his name for tax purposes, but enclosed is a legal agreement we both signed, stipulating that the house is to be jointly owned by both of you and cannot be sold without mutual consent until 5 years after my passing. My hands shook as I flipped through the document. There it was, signed by both Dad and David, notarized and official. "I've also established a trust in your name," Dad's letter continued. "It contains enough funds to cover your education and provide you with stability as you build your career. David knows about this but cannot access it. The details are with my attorney, Margaret Wilson, whose contact information is enclosed." Tears blurred my vision, but this time they weren't only from grief. Dad hadn't abandoned me after all. He had protected me, even from beyond the grave, anticipating the very betrayal that had occurred. I checked the time, 10:30 p.m. Too late to call an attorney, but not too late to confront my brother. I drove to David's apartment in downtown Portland, the documents secure in my bag. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. All the hurt, the fear, the anger of the past few days had crystallized into a steely resolve. When David opened his door, his expression shifted from surprise to wariness. "Tash, what are you doing here so late?" "I need to talk to you," I said, pushing past him into the sleek, modern apartment he shared with Lauren. She was there, sitting on the couch, her face a mask of polite confusion. "I found something interesting tonight," I said, pulling out the documents and slapping them down on the coffee table. "Care to explain why you sold a house you legally couldn't sell without my consent?" The color drained from David's face as he recognized the paperwork. Lauren looked between us, her brow furrowed. "David, what is she talking about?" "It's nothing," he said quickly, reaching for the papers, but I snatched them back. "It's not nothing, it's fraud," I said. "You sold property that wasn't yours to sell. That's illegal, David." "You wouldn't really sue your own brother," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I wouldn't have thought my own brother would steal my inheritance either. Yet here we are." I turned to Lauren. "Did you know about this agreement? That David couldn't legally sell that house without my consent?" Her eyes widened, darting to David accusingly. "You said it was all taken care of, that Natasha was fine with it." The realization hit me like a physical blow. "You told her I knew? That I agreed to this?" David's silence was confirmation enough. "The sale completes on Monday," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to choke me. "You have until then to cancel it, or I'm calling Dad's attorney first thing Monday morning." "Natasha, be reasonable," David began, but Lauren cut him off. "No, David, fix this." Her voice was ice. "I will not start our family with stolen money." I looked at my sister-in-law with newfound respect. Perhaps she wasn't the villain I'd assumed her to be. "Dad also left me a trust," I said, turning back to David. "Did you know about that too?" His eyes couldn't meet mine. I knew. "Were you ever going to tell me?" He had no answer. I gathered the documents and headed for the door. At the threshold, I paused, looking back at my brother, this person I'd loved and trusted my entire life, now revealed as someone capable of such calculated betrayal. "Dad believed you were better than this," I said softly. "So did I." The call came on Monday morning. I was at Eliza's, surrounded by boxes, still planning my next move despite the confrontation with David. I hadn't heard from him since that night, and part of me expected to have to follow through on my threat to involve attorneys. But when I answered, it was Lauren's voice that greeted me. "Natasha, it's done. The sale is canceled." Relief washed over me so intensely I had to sit down. "Really?" "Yes. David's on his way to the house now to tell you in person, but I wanted to call first." She paused. "I had no idea, Natasha, about any of it. The agreement, the trust, that you didn't know about the sale. I'm so sorry." "Thank you for telling me," I said, unsure what else to add. While I appreciated her call, it didn't erase the pain of what had happened. "David and I were working through some things," she continued. "What he did, what he almost did, it's not the man I married. It's not the person I want raising our child." I remained silent, letting her speak. "We're not moving to Seattle anymore," she said. "David's company has agreed to let him keep his position here in Portland. We're going to get counseling." Another pause. "I hope someday you can forgive him. Forgive us." After we hung up, I sat quietly, processing. Forgiveness seemed like a distant, unlikely possibility at that moment, but the fact that the house was still mine, still ours, felt like the first step in a long journey of healing. When David arrived an hour later, he looked different, smaller somehow. The confidence that had always radiated from him dimmed by shame. "The sale is off," he said, standing awkwardly in Eliza's living room. "The house is still ours." "Yours and mine," I corrected. "Legally." He nodded. "Yours and mine?" He held out a set of papers. "I've had my attorney draw up new documentation. The house is being put in both our names, officially." "And?" He hesitated. "I've also transferred half of what would have been the sale price into your account. $600,000. It's what Dad would have wanted." I took the papers wordlessly. "I'm sorry, Tash," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't know what happened to me. After Dad died, with the wedding, and Lauren's career taking off, and the baby coming, I just got caught up in building this perfect life and forgot about what really matters." "Family," I said quietly. "Yes." His eyes met mine, filled with regret. "Can we start over, please?" I wanted to say yes immediately, to embrace him and put this all behind us. But trust, once broken, isn't so easily repaired. "I need time, David," I said honestly. "You betrayed me in the worst way possible. You were going to let me become homeless while you profited from our family home." He flinched but nodded. "I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready." After he left, I returned to the house-me house. Our house and began the process of unpacking, reclaiming the space that had so nearly been lost to me. The familiar rooms welcomed me back, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. That evening, as I sat on the porch swing where Dad used to tell us stories on summer nights, I opened his letter again, reading his words of wisdom and love. He had known that David might falter, but he had also believed in my strength to stand up for myself. He had protected me, but he had also given me the tools to protect myself. I thought about David, about the brother I had known before ambition and greed had temporarily consumed him. I thought about Lauren, standing firm in her principles even against her husband. I thought about the niece or nephew on the way, who would never know their grandfather but might someday hear stories of his wisdom and foresight. Forgiveness would come, I knew, but not tonight. Tonight was for healing, for finding my footing again in the home that had almost been taken from me. Tomorrow would be soon enough to begin rebuilding what had been broken. As the sun set over the neighborhood where I'd grown up, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Dad had believed in me, had trusted me to weather this storm. And I had. Despite everything, I was still standing, still in the home he had wanted me to have, still moving forward with the life he had been so proud to see me building. In the end, my brother had tried to sell our family home without telling me, but what he'd really done was give me the opportunity to discover my own strength and resilience. And for that, perhaps someday, I might even thank him.